Okay, I'm with Chris Huhne, the Climate Change and Energy Secretary. Chris, people in Coventry and Warwickshire and elsewhere have woken up to appalling headlines this morning. The Independent says pain but no gain. This follows youth unemployment hitting 1 million in official figures yesterday. We have 2.6 million unemployed, and yet it now looks the Office for Budget Responsibility seems to accept that the government is now off course to eliminate the deficit or the structural deficit as intended by 2015. Is it time now for you to accept that your policies as a government are not working, just as the Lib Dems did in opposition, and for you to say now to people in Coventry, where unemployment is nearly 1 in 10, that we need to drastically change course?
Well, I think the first and most crucial thing is to understand why what has been happening. And what is very striking to me is that if you look at the downgrading of growth in the UK, it's almost exactly the same as the downgrading that is happening in the United States and on the continent in Europe. And you can turn the television on and you know what's going on in the Eurozone. But you've also got, despite the fact that the United States has been pursuing very expansionary policies, you've actually seen an absolutely similar downgrading in growth there. So we're dealing with a worldwide crisis here, which we're not immune from. And I think that one of the absolute key successes that the government has had is that when so many countries over the last year have been hit by massive crises on the continent of Europe, Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and indeed Ireland, even though we have a larger budget deficit than Greece, for example, we have not had the same sort of increase in interest rates, the same sort of crisis that they have had there. So I think the key first achievement of the coalition government is to stop the legacy that we inherited from the last Labour government, which was effectively one of a massive budget deficit, which was leading us into real problems.
Right. We had people queuing up yesterday from the opposition rather inevitably to say that it's simply not acceptable. Geoffrey Robinson, the Labour MP here, saying it's downright dishonesty to blame the European crisis, that we had a slump long before the European crisis hit. The Mervyn King, the Bank of England governor, yesterday has now downgraded growth forecasts to 1% next year. That's allowing for the euro crisis to correct itself and allowing for inflation to come back down. Isn't that an indication that government policies were failing jobs, failing people in places like Coventry and Warwickshire long before the European crisis hit?
I think that the key point is, particularly people in Coventry will understand, because Coventry has obviously been such an important manufacturing centre for so long, that manufacturing in particular is working in a world market. And although we can get and must get the conditions for manufacturing industry absolutely right, we've got to make sure that the skills are there, we've got to make sure that the industry is competitive and the exchange rate is now very competitive compared with other countries. The reality is that if world markets are depressed, then that is going to affect everyone. But what we are doing is in the process of announcing a whole series of new initiatives to encourage growth, and indeed what we're looking at today is one of them. The Green Deal, which we're launching next year, will be making available to hundreds of thousands of people real insulation in their homes, which will cut their energy bills, which will mean that they'll have more income that they can spend on other things, and it will be good for jobs because we can boost the number of people employed in the industry from about 27,000 now to 100,000 by 2015, 250,000 at its peak. And in the process we will be benefiting households, we'll be benefiting the economy, benefiting jobs. So that's good news. That's one example of the sort of growth initiative which we're taking.
On the Green Deal then, are you concerned about take-up? Just to take a microcosm, we had the Sainsbury's initiative where they offered free insulation to 147,000 of their employees, and only 200 wanted to take it up. And that is some of the criticism coming from the opposition benches, that you may need incentives for, if you're going to achieve what you want to, millions of households and businesses taking up this Green Deal to improve the energy efficiency of their homes.
We've already introduced a number of incentives as part of the package of the Energy Act coming into force. So, for example, we've got a scheme whereby private landlords will be upgrading any property that has got an energy performance certificate of F or G, and they have to upgrade that by 2018. So that's already 700,000 properties which we know are going to have to be improved by 2018. We've got, for example, council tax incentives, that councils can reduce council tax in their area to encourage energy installation, and that might be something that the Coventry City Council would be interested in doing, given, for example, the way in which some of these neighbourhood schemes that I'm looking at today are taking off. That's potentially very good for local jobs. It's also very good for local people in terms of protecting them against energy price rises. So there are real gains there. The Chancellor committed himself in the last budget to looking at further incentives in the next budget, and we are right the way across the board. We're looking at different ways in which we can encourage take-up.
Talking about energy bills, we've got a winter coming up. We had rising deaths from problems with heating last winter. In the meantime, we have 17% increases in heating bills from the big six energy companies, including E.ON, based here in Coventry. They have, it's estimated by Ofgem that they have profits per customer of £125, and yet bills are going up to possibly, one estimate is £300 for the average household between December and February this winter. Hasn't something more got to be done to make these big six energy companies pay their way?
Well, I think
and to help cut bills.
There are things that we're doing in the short term, medium term, and long term. In the short term, one of the ways in which people can get a grip on energy costs, and I entirely agree with you, it's completely unacceptable, particularly for those in fuel poverty. They should be facing choices between heating and eating, for example. So what we want to do in the short run is encourage people to check whether they're on the cheapest available tariff, to switch to a cheaper supplier if they can get one, and Ofgem estimates that people can save on average £200 a year in doing that switching. There's also a lot of free insulation available, or discounted insulation available, which can be installed still in time for the depths of winter. That can save on energy bills. So, and we are, in the medium term, that's not immediately for this winter, but we are, for example, introducing new legislation to ensure that the big six have to give money back to consumers if there is an abuse of their position. We've given new powers to Ofgem to speed up implementation against the big six. We've introduced also new statutory backing for discounts for those in fuel poverty, so that 600,000 pensioners in fuel poverty will get a discount on their fuel bill of £120 this winter, and that's 2/3 more than was being provided by the last government. We're also, in the medium term, we have to get more and more of our homes insulated to the sort of standard that we've seen today. Because if you do that, what we're doing is reducing reliance on the use of gas and other energy sources, and we're saving very substantial amounts of money for the household.
Will your legislation seriously commit the big six energy companies to seriously doing something about 17% rises in household bills? What we've spoken to E.ON today, who tell us about their problems with the cost of investing in renewable energy, and they also talk about the global rise of prices for things like gas. They'll say this is business.
Yeah.
What will your legislation do?
It is true that there has been a rise of 38% in the world wholesale price of gas over the last year. And if we go on being as reliant
on fossil fuel prices on gas as we are, then that is a danger. And that's precisely why we should be moving towards other forms of electricity generation, other forms of energy, nuclear, and also clean coal and gas and renewables, because it makes us less reliant, and it's why energy saving is so important, because we can get real reductions in bills in the long run as soon as people get their homes improved. But in the short run, what we can do for this winter is make sure that people check their bill, get onto the cheapest tariff, change supplier if that's cheaper as well. They can save £200 through doing that. Check that they've got their basic insulation through cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, because that can save serious money, and they can get a grip on their bills even in the very short run. But otherwise there's things that we can do in the very short run, in the medium run, and in the long term. But what we have to do is make ourselves less vulnerable as both households, as an economy, to these very sharp swings in world prices that we've seen over the last year.
But in the short term, you're saying people are going to have to accept 17%.
No, I've just said that we're running a campaign called Check, Switch, Insulate and Save, which is about making sure that people, and I had a meeting yesterday with one of the web comparison websites, which the average customer that switched on that website was saving £230 a year. So yes, you can make a big difference by actually going and switching. At the moment, only about 15% of us bother to switch, but if we actually did that, we would find that there are still big savings. Okay.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice one, Les.
Cheers.
Get these guys.